All right. I have a matter of concern. Uh, Infrastructured to agree with osteo class and the building up of that class, as is that school of thought represents and advocates for the purging of the earth and the purging of this earth in trade union ties with the apothecary, that it can, with that purge, extinguish infirmities. The times that we're living in, with compulsion at a rate incalculable, the emergence of rational and irrational peace can either be determined, predetermined, or preordained at the cost or expense of ecumenical inequity. It's a releasing or giving up or delivering unjustly or justly whatever constitution has deemed you free. So there was a day and time when liberation before providence was the makings of our technological advance. Freedom was the culprit of arrest. Freedom was in a day a major affliction. After having advanced from those times, we are learned in an area of expertise, as history recants it, could possibly introspectively recall in reflection what it never exponentially experienced, objectively, and enumeration subjectively. Therein, technological advance, being it a despair or subjective appreciation and gratitude, being it a denial or revolution, we could together, collectively, consort to concede or consist in simplicity. What I learned was that the mastermind is a residual output of what it's made up of. That's the union tie which has enough commitment to extinguish what in liturgical reconciliation was made to demystify. It was made to make clear and plain, as is the writings on the wall, as is we climb and soar and we reach until the day of gratitude. Needless to say, we find those things and we reach those goals and we agree with those appreciations, the emergence of contentment today is the basis of the tabernacle of the host, that the pavilion of the apothecary refuges to be a safe haven, warranting a casting system publicly, privately, openly. In the continuum of that friction, what gets greater is how to weigh the virtue of the residual, the depth of vision in this ecumenical emergence. It can't be anything rather than or other than inclusive. Because the conversions, the trade union ties, are in exchange of vexations, hexes, preempting judgments, which lift and give way to the suppressed or the caged. Without the sore approach, we may, in some ways, never be able to outwit what we cannot, without inclusion, exalt. So to say that simply is to say this: there is a means of documentations charted at the disposal of representation. Now, televised representation nevertheless warrants absolute reality, which not always is indicative of absolute truth, but it should dominion impulsive vanity. That's the makings of the energy that elevate in consistence with the exaltation. This is a geld transference of inequitable ecumenical emergence at the purge of the apothecaries' union ties, which are only able to be distributive property vestors. Therein no era of, rather it be infidelity or virtuous commitments, can stop the extinguishing of infirmities. So we're casing it to a Macumba tax with appreciation and gratitude, all to that F1 Po. We were given to an instruction to acknowledge that we may have a guide. This is a compass that you may know what dominion to navigate in governing whatever assignment is instructed or advised to be your inclusion. This is a communistic world. As a scout, I've learned dominion in its place can be the face of the edict of our abbot's conveyance, or our abbot inquiries, or our abbot contentments. I'll say it again. I've learned that the edict of our abbot's conveyance or contentment can be or is in the communistic world either our underappreciated fraternization or our over fraternized means to exalt our greater common good. As we are in that gall or vein, beneficiaries of what ecumenical, faithful, committed, distributive property investments can do. There aren't a variety of conduits. Dominioning the face of edicts abbots cast. There's only one union that does it. In times past, we've seen them, and they've worn white cowls. They've been considered Knights Templars. We've known them today, and the capital transference, often more times than many, had began, I've learned, to sever the consciousness of, if we were to apply for a job, be overqualified. That's the vex. That severed consciousness, being in a jobless state, then till further and beyond, becomes an overqualified constituent within the Constitution of its amendment rights. This is why communism today is an account of F1 Pole's revolution. F1 Pole's revolution is the simplicity alongside liturgical reconciliation's depth and weight of its shadow. As is all of ours, have a measure that doesn't all the way reach or see us the same. So I want to explain to you, if I could verbatimly say what I had written in the notes as I charted it from the documentations in the link, and one of my links. This is a template. You need notes. Write it down. The instructions have changed from ecumenical council. We are now marking our territory. This is a communistic world. Marking your territory means understanding the dominion assigned to your sacrifice. Understanding the rule or reign assigned to be the offering leaving your pavilion, as that is the coming and the going of the tabernacle of hosts, which is the open door of the apothecary. Now that you have an understanding of that, I give you to a binding contract. And if you could appropriate what it is that firm or crumbles you from a perspective of or depiction of place, then you could count what comes and what goes. Example, my vestibule, the space, that space. It's a cell. It's a cell. In it, if I close the door and soundproof it, no one can hear me. I can infrastructure it to any new creation I'd like it to be. A cell, a time machine, a studio, a hole, a well. A box. But the doors are not ajar. Because I am authenticating firm and I'm representing the crumbled, the voice then not only is ineffective, but the voice is unwell. Do I need an escape? Or do I need to hide? Do I need to come in or do I need to leave out? Do I need to stand or do I need to crouch? What is at your door keeping you from the exaltation? What is in your tabernacle despising or rejecting you from peace in your pavilion? Is it good to be there alone? Is it wise to keep the lights on or off? It's my vestibule door. Is it any form of evolution and exchange possibilities? Or does the interchange only occur because being unwell is the only reasons F1 Poe has a gain or advantage or lead anyhow? So does a way out of no way make F1 Poe have free will, or does it make F1 Poe poor in will? So what has to be eviscerated or exercised is the unchanging contract and the bonding ties that are unioned unto the days of the first constituents after the Constitution, which were embargoed to F1 Poe. But F1 Poe's place, F1 Poe's dominion, the embargo, it can only be unwell. Contained in this space can be a walls of prohibited persecution. How does the persecution in a pavilion have room to unbind a contract with the scrutiny emphasized in a jar or a jar of the apothecary? Therein, no liturgical reconciliation can ambassador or represent edicts cast in the pavilion of the reason for its space or place for F1 Poe's tabernacle of host to beyond the Embargo Act. So the constituent is only a singularity until the days it unbinds the contract with the view of its tabernacle or pavilion. A lot of us can extinguish infirmities because we're moving so fast. We're not knowing, or we're ignorant of a immovable device. We're unaware of the offenses assigned to the place or area of edict abbots device. Because F1 Poe is not the place. F1 Poe is the decision or the instruction. The obedience of edicts abbots is the uncompromising way. Without the trade, or if there was not a trade, in the tabernacle of host, dominioning ecumenical council in the first place. The means and reasons, remember, for this mitigation is because the sacrifice of F1 Poe and the offering of edicts abbots, which is the place of where the unwell infirmity is that we may reap harvest from the distributive property of faithful and commitment, which is the Holy of Holies, and we can benefit from the extinguishing of infirmities as that represents liturgical reconciliation. So knowing your place is to know the benefits assigned to your F1 Poe so that you can monopoly what does and doesn't belong. Case in point, do I need to eviscerate what's within? Do I need to escape? Do I need to align a convergence, some form of exorcism relative or indicative of the vex or hex in the first place? So, being the constituent in existence of history's embargo unto the day of all of this which it entails could predetermine or preordain the height of expectation or the monopoly of zero exaltation, which was always there from the first place. So now I'm going to shift the entire, it's 31 minutes and 32 seconds. I'm going to shift and apex the entire climax of the discussion. I'm going to take you through a turn of events, like a mountain, like a few hills, but who shall abide? Who shall dwell? Like I always say, you want to write notes. Because this, when comments arise, communistic world, there's no thing as is uncommon to man that what you know won't get me to escape, and what I know can't get me to escape. So include yourself. But here it goes. Leaving the box, being free as free can be. The mentality of the Holocaust in Russia to this day, it concentrates, installs reasons to believe that if there were people like you and I there, if there were people you can identify with in association with what you were made of, what you are believed as a whole being, and relative cultural consistencies with your motherland, not your homeland. How do you study and consist with exaltation rather than reproach? Because history tells us that from here to what we see here, and a hue of euphemisms separate us greatly. I have yet to see accounts where what I am in Russia is indicative of a sir in my stead. What I am in the motherland denotes what I am in my own place. So if I'm without honor there and I have no account as a Republican there, how do I not be naive, scant, stint, weak to what makes me unwell in my own dominion? Because all around the numbers of my head and its hearers, it has to grow by all the winds of the earth. But if the numbers of the hairs on my head were to grow by the place that keeps me contained and unwell, I wouldn't grow all my hair. And so I have to think that my space where maybe Barabbas is from, Barabbas could possibly be a Nigerian. When the stocks on Budweiser and Rosé increases, the economy in Nigeria is below sea level. The Nile River is in danger of deserting all of its irrigation supply. What's that mean to Barabbas in Nigeria? What's that mean to the pillar of Barabbas in Deer Park? It means that Barabbas distinguishingly or instinctively has little time to beyond embargo, because if he reaches the prohibition some 2 years later at the Berlin Wall, he's prophetically walking with a salvation catechism that is in an affliction sacral suffrage. So it can't not hold to God's unchanging hand, because God's unchanging hand can be envious. It can be jealous that it made man. And God's unchanging hand also, as the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, it can be intimate and naive just with the woman's well. So in the tabernacle of the pavilion of exaltation, rather than the tabernacle of the pavilion of commitment, or rather than the tabernacle of the pavilion of relocation, or rather than the tabernacle of the pavilion of sacrifice, within those four contrasting, comparing articles of interest, sacral conflict must, in communism, not democracy, it must agree and learn and know the Republican syndicate of disdain, because that space, the dominion of right, has to with God's unchanging hand, predetermine or preordain what it's been ordinanced to in the first place. Don't let your left know what your right hand is doing. My eyes, my left one and my right one. I don't know how to separate them. If I do, I can't see it. So leaving my union is a scale by itself. It's a constituent that could never be whole again. So it's 41 minutes. We're coming around 7 o'clock. I'm going to pray and leave out, because sometimes explanatory trials can surface or can be confusing. So I'm going to pray it out, and I'm going to give the prayer the same reverence as is the explanation of the trial at this cost or expense. So, Lord, the sacrifice of this lamb, which spoke from the vessel as an undercutting omen to know the purpose and intents of the oracle. Lead us not astray. Let us not deny the powers, even to the inquiries of the saints of excellency. Let our contentments contend with the inquiries of Lodabar that are constantly travailing to and fro as they are given their elevation in the ciphorous nature of what it possesses to exalt, as it comes from Hades. Let's light the pavilion. Let's eviscerate the wicked evilness forcefully trying to enter the tabernacle. Through prayer, we usher the canvas of sacral acceptance. Through petitions, we eviscerate the stripes and chords of disparity, predestined and predetermined and preordained to our tears. We acknowledge our hopes and appreciation that we are exalted to the comforts of that fate with the measure of the depth of the shadows given to us, whether they are there or they leave. Let's image our world in the dominion of faithfulness, commitment, dedication, that no single free mind can unbind its contract with a God who is grateful, favorable. To a jealous God, no honor is awful. But to a majestic Lord, let us acknowledge and see God for its decipherous intentions, that we may know our dominion, we may know our governance, we may acknowledge the elevation of its power. Indistinguishable reverence of our imperfections, till the day we are made perfect. I exhort you with patience. I extol you with respect. I acknowledge you with a name. Today, that name is Barabbas. Free him, Lord.